We are walking through a neighborhood where one of the most horrific serial killers of all time used to live.
That's right, this quiet suburban neighborhood just outside of Chicago, Illinois, used to be the home of John Wayne Gacy. In this video, we're going to show you his house, his childhood home, where some more bodies might be hidden. Plus, we're going to take you to some of the grave sites of some of his victims and pay respects to them. And we cordially invite you to come along for the adventure.
Come along. He was known as Pogo the Clown, Patches the Clown, and then later on, the Killer Clown. His slogan was, "Clowns can get away with murder."
And sure enough, he did get away with murder for quite a few years back in the 1970s. It's crazy because the police could have caught him much earlier if they would have listened more to some of these victims' parents, if they would have investigated a little bit harder. Gacy had already been in trouble for some sort of sexual assault back several years before he even came to Illinois. And once he was here, of course, things started mounting up on him. Evidence started mounting up on him. He ran a contracting business building homes, and he would hire a lot of youth in the area to work for him. Sometimes they would go missing, and this happened multiple times. With Gacy being the name, they kept being brought up. Hey, he worked for Gacy. Hey, Gacy owed him money. They got into a fight about money. All these different things that came together that you think would have pointed right at Gacy.
They even had family members that came over to the house, said that they smelled something, and he would blame it on rodents or say that it was mold.
Yeah, there was a strange smell in the house, actually. That was part of how he got caught when the police would monitor. They were hiding outside of his house later on, and they would go in. He'd invite them in to use the bathroom, and they started to smell something in the house. So it was at this house that we're about to come up to right now where almost all of the murders took place. He also had the bodies hidden in this house, dozens of bodies. Most of them were hidden in a crawl space. There was one that was under the cement in his garage. That's because his wife had gone out of town with the stepkids, and she came back early. When she came back, he still had the body in the garage apparently, and he had to quickly hide it. So he put it under some cement underneath the garage. Now, actually, I might have said in this house. It's actually not this house. This is the house location. The house was torn down. They ripped through the house, tore up the crawl space. We're coming up to it right now, by the way. Let's turn around, take a look. Right here is the house location. Of course, like I said, his house was torn down. The police ripped through the house, ripped through the crawl space, found the bodies, tore the whole house down. It was rebuilt. Actually, this one is for sale. Now, here in Illinois, for some reason, real estate agents don't have to list if there was a crime that occurred in the house. So someone might end up buying this house without realizing what happened on this property.
That's pretty crazy.
You can clearly see the for sale sign in the window of the house. Police tore up the crawl space, driveway, yard, garage, and other areas of Gacy's house while searching for the remains of his victims.
It's crazy to think that being in such a nice, quiet little neighborhood that he didn't get busted much sooner from all the noise and everything that went on there.
There are actually some reports of some neighbors hearing sounds. Apparently, almost all the murders took place between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. So a lot of people were asleep. I guess for the heavy sleepers, they wouldn't have woken up. But you would think that there would have been a lot of light sleepers that would have heard something going on with all the yelling and screaming coming from the house.
Gacy hid 29 of his victims' bodies on the property, most in the crawl space of his house.
We are getting ready to walk down West Miami Avenue to a 5-unit apartment building where Gacy used to work as a groundskeeper for many years. At some point, he moved his mother into the apartment building.
This place is one that a lot of people think there could be more bodies hidden, buried underground here at this property, maybe multiple bodies. One of those people who believes that is a retired homicide detective, Bill Dorsch. He used to live right down the block from this apartment complex. He said one night, back in 1975, he saw Gacy standing out near this apartment complex with a spade in his hand. It's actually early morning, around 3 a.m. And he asked him what he was doing, and Gacy apparently responded with something like, "You got to get the work, got to get it done when you can." And only later did Dorsch start thinking, what was he trying to get done at 3 in the morning? There are also stories of some neighbors that saw him digging trenches in the front yard of this property. Let's turn around and take a look at it. The building still stands as it did back then.
These apartments are only 4 miles away from where Gacy's former house was located. Could there be more bodies here? Of course, but the sheriff's office may never do a full dig on this site to find out for sure.
The local sheriff's department has done some digging throughout the years on this property. However, they did not do much, and it doesn't seem like they are actually trying to find something.
They haven't done much at all. As a matter of fact, they set up a white tent somewhere on the property and dug that one little spot one time back in 1998. And since then, not much has happened. They've checked the ground a little bit for inconsistencies. But again, they haven't done a proper dig on the property, and now the owners there don't want them to. But the reality is here that if there is even one child underground whose family members might still be wondering where they are, it'd be worth it to get a dig done there.
Many people have heard the name John Wayne Gacy, but not many people have heard about his victims. We are here to pay our respects and to tell you a bit about them.
The first one that we found is John Butkovich. We'll flip right around here. Right here. John died in 1975. He was working for John Wayne Gacy for about 6 months. He disappeared. His car was found, keys in the engine, $40, his wallet, all that in the car. His parents, of course, immediately told the police about John Wayne Gacy. They went to him and asked them to investigate him. The police didn't do much investigating. They actually called the police department more than 100 times over the next 3 years to tell them to investigate John Wayne Gacy.
18-year-old John Butkovich was the first of Gacy's victims to be identified. Up until that point, police had found 27 bodies over a period of 8 days and hadn't identified any of them. On December 30th, they released they had identified Butkovich.
Michael Moreno was last seen October 24th, 1976. That day he made his mother Sherry a sandwich and said that he was headed off to the game room where the kids liked to play pinball back in that day.
Unfortunately, John Wayne Gacy also used to like to hang out at that spot and look for some of his victims. Sherry said that they were supposed to go to a movie, her son and her, that night. Unfortunately, he never made it home. She began to panic. She called the police. They said, well, that's what teenagers sometimes do. She said, not my son. For the next 3 years, she frantically searched for Michael. That included even going to some local drug houses. She said, well, what if he got in with the wrong crowd? So she started going in there. People were getting high. She'd charge in and say, look, I'm looking for my son, and show them a picture. She also spent thousands of dollars hiring private investigators during that period of time.
Moreno was only 14 years old when he went missing. His mother Sherry doesn't believe he is buried here though, and actually his body was exhumed in 2012 and DNA records did not match with hers. Authorities still say dental records match and that they believe it is Michael buried here. But could it be another one of Gacy's victims that still wasn't identified to this day? It's a mystery that may never be solved.
On September 15th, 1977, Robert Gilroy was reported missing. Gacy had actually purchased plane tickets, and it was proven that he was out of town from the 12th to the 16th.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing about this one. This is where a theory has come into play that quite possibly Gacy had at least one accomplice. Actually, another one of the victims that survived said there was another man in the room with Gacy. Now we've got a situation where one of the bodies that ended up in Gacy's crawl space ended up there, but he disappeared at a time when Gacy wasn't even in town.
Gilroy was killed in a different way than Gacy's other victims, adding to the belief Gacy didn't actually kill him.
We are walking on over to John Wayne Gacy's childhood home. There, the roles were reversed. His father was an abuser and he was the victim.
Yeah, the home is going to be right over here across the street.
Gacy's father was an alcoholic who not only beat the children, but also beat their mother here in this house. Gacy said he was never good enough for his father, but he also said he never hated his father.
Gacy said that one of his earliest memories as a child was when his father had beat him at the age of 4 for rearranging his engine pieces. His dad had also, on a different occasion, hit him over the head with a broom so hard it left him unconscious.
There were also some other issues that Gacy had. What was it, a heart condition or something?
Yes, he had a heart condition.
And that sent him to the hospital, but his father said he was making the whole thing up, that it wasn't true. And seizures. His father didn't believe any of it, of course. His father was not a very pleasant guy. You see this a lot in the situations with serial killers. Something else interesting here is that Gacy, at some point in time, said something about perhaps his first murder was around the age of 14 or 15. Also, there's a book out that has a story where some detectives have looked into a murder that happened when Gacy would have just been 13 years old in 1955. He was in the area. Gacy knew the guys, or at least lived near them, and there's some connections there. It's a possibility that he had something to do with that. And obviously, we got a fire truck coming. Hopefully everybody's okay there. But this book looked into the idea that Gacy could have been the murderer of these 3 other children. So there's a possibility, a very decent, I would say, possibility that while he lived in that house, he could have committed his first murder or murderers.
John Wayne Gacy was killed by lethal injection on May 10th, 1994, at the age of 52.
This was such a sad story. So many victims and so many different things happen. We can only hope that one day these other families will be able to have some kind of closure.
Our condolences go out to anyone out there who was affected by this monster.